Underground. 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 Underground.
Greetings, surface dwellers. My name is Michael, and these are my chthonic musings. Evidently, we're in the midst of a trend, the top 10 RPG games of all time. And so I thought I'd throw my hat in the ring here and give a list of mine. And these are not necessarily the best designed games of all time. These are games that I have played and game mastered and had a good time with my friends, and and those are the criteria. Like Stephen Sills saying, you know, if you can't be with the one you love the one you're with. And I think a similar thing applies to our games. If you can't necessarily play the game that you love the game that you're in. Number 10 on the list is D&D 5th Edition, subtitled by some as Good Enough D&D. I started playing 5th Edition when a group came and started like kind of a club, I would say, at the Dungeon Delvers at the church that I was going to at the time. The game was popular enough that and had good connections with game stores that they had D&D games running at the various game stores, and had the Adventurers League going. And this group, the Dungeon Master was associated with the church that, their family went to the same church as I did. And they brought their game from one of the local game stores to the church. And I thought that was a good opportunity. I can just hop in and get in on a game. I don't know, it was fun to be gaming again after a bit of a hiatus for me. Although I was always, working on games and designing worlds and adventures and such, I wasn't always, gaming in consistently in a group. So that was good to get back into a game. And sure enough, it was good enough, and there were interesting parts about it, and still are, and there are some weird and wonky things, and things that not how I would have done it, but fun. And then after a bit, the game master, the dungeon master, moved away. And we decided to try to continue the game, and it worked out pretty well, where we were still in the conference room in person, all of the players, and then set up, a big screen TV with, a video conferencing. I think it was still Discord. I think we were using Discord, but whatever it was, it's really just the video part that we were using. And that worked out okay. And then eventually during COVID, that kind of fell apart. And we disbanded for a while. But within the last couple of years, we kind of reformed and got together again. And now we're doing it completely online over Discord. Entirely theater of the mind, though. No miniatures, no maps. So it's all just video conferencing kind of thing through Discord. On a mostly weekly schedule, and it's been a bit of fun. We play it freeform, kind of not too serious, on the verge of gonzo maybe. And I play a Minotaur Eldritch Knight with a flamethrower. He's based loosely on Robert De Niro's character in 1985's Terry Gilliam's Brazil. Harry Tuttle, the rogue freelance heating engineer. I also, during COVID, ran an online game for my family and friends with a heavily modified version of 5th edition, which was an interesting experiment for a bit more serious take, and that worked pretty well. Although I could have hardly advertised it as 5th edition to people outside. It was so hacked and modified. And in fact, that's why when I made the pitch, I said, it's thinking about running a game that's based on 5th edition D&D. Number 9 is Dungeons and Dragons 3rd edition, which including 3.0, the revised 3.5, the D20 third-party D20 supplements at the time, also Pathfinder 1st edition, which some people refer to as D&D 3.75, and the Dragon magazine, by which I mean the Dragon magazines published at that time. 3rd edition D&D was my first return to D&D after having transitioned to other games. I never really played 2nd edition, and in fact I think I can say to this date I haven't, to my knowledge, played a game of 2nd edition. I ran a campaign in 3rd edition that was kind of like alternative races, cobbling together information from the Oriental Adventures, which was a 3.0 book, and also Savage Species, which was one of the supplements in 3rd edition, or 3.5. It might have been right at the cusp of the transition between the two. Anyhow, that was a lot of fun, and my son's first role-playing experience, playing as a kobold sorcerer, and eventually an arcane trickster. He multi-classed into rogue and then eventually into arcane trickster. And then more recently, this past summer, I was invited to an in-person game every other week, and it was Pathfinder 1st edition, which, although I had gotten a few supplements back in the day of Pathfinder 1st edition, but just to kind of steal stuff from and plug it into my 3.5 campaign. But now I'm playing it legit, and not only that, but I'm now playing in the highest level campaign that I've ever played in. So that's been a challenge, kind of starting fresh. I mean, not completely fresh, because it's the basis of a system that I was, familiar with, but not the specific implementation in Pathfinder, and also with all of the supplements and books that are in Pathfinder, none of which, except for the few supplements that I had, which aren't really applicable to the current game. I had quite the learning curve, and still do. I'm still playing catch up, trying to do this, because not only is it high level, I was just turned 18th level, but we're also doing mythic adventures. So there's like godlike powers. There's tiers, mythic tiers, and on top of that. So it's quite complicated. But I'm having a good time, even though, kind of seat of the pants. But that's the way I like to play it. Just right at the edge of chaos, seat of the pants style. Number 8 is Gamma World. I have fond memories of playing Gamma World back in the early 80s. As a player, one of my friends ran the game, and I think I had a couple of characters. They were always mutants of some type, either mutated humans or mutated animals. And the one I remember best, although not completely, was a bear. It was a mutated bear, and he had 2 brains. If I remember correctly, he also had some sort of like psionic or psychic powers, and could, because he had 2 brains, he could mind blast like 2 different targets. And I also recall from the game that one of the points of the game was to try to find ancient artifacts, and then try to figure them out so that you could use them. And Gamma World had a system, and I think it came from Metamorphosis Alpha, and was also replicated in the AD&D module S1 Expedition to the Barrier Peak, where there was like a flowchart, and you would like navigate and do several roles. Were they intelligence rolls? I don't really recall exactly. But there were certain nodes along this like flowchart, and hopefully you made your way to the path where you figured out what the artifact did, and maybe you'd make a path where you just failed and didn't figure it out. But there was an unfortunate path that you could take also, where something horribly went wrong, and the device exploded or something like that. So, and that was part of the fun of playing a game of Gamma World. At number 7, Star Frontiers. This was another game that I played with my friends back in the early 80s, and I was a player. This was a game that one of my friends game mastered, and this was the only game that he had game mastered. He was usually a player, and we we had a lot of fun with it. I think what I remember most about the time playing Star Frontiers was not so much my character, human mechanic, but a friend of mine played a Dralosite, the what do you call it, like shape-shifting, rubbery, I think they were redone as plasmoids in the current version of Spelljammer. But yeah, back in Star Frontiers, the Dralosites, part of their description was that they had a strange, they were philosophers, but they had a strange way of thinking, and they loved human puns and practical jokes, I think. And my friend just latched onto that. He was quite the punster. And the friend that ran it, like I said, this was the only game he ran. And Star Frontiers is a science fiction game, but my only experience with it was this group of us teenagers back in the day. So I don't know if the game was intended to be serious science fiction, like Heinlein and Asimov and Bradbury, but the friend that ran it ran it more like Douglas Adams, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And my friend that played the Dralosite was right there with him. So it was fun and funny. And just recently, a couple of years ago, or maybe it was, yeah, a couple of years ago, tried to get into a Star Frontiers or a couple of linked Star Frontiers game at the ShireCon, but unfortunately they were canceled, and then I had to, redo my schedule. But I got to play a game of Gangbusters, which was good, which I hadn't done for a long time. But I would like to at some point try to see if somebody else is running a Star Frontiers game and see how it matches up to the way it was back in the day, 40 years ago. And in spot number 6, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And while this wasn't the first version of D&D that I played, that would be Holmes Basic. This is the first role-playing game that I owned, and the first one that I game mastered or dungeon mastered. A couple of my friends ran adventures in AD&D or short mini campaigns, including an evil campaign where us players were all members of a cult of Set, which was kind of fun. But I'd say that definitely the bulk of our gaming, of our role playing, was my multi-year campaign in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And often when we had, family members or friends that were of our age come visit us, they would get shanghaied into playing D&D with us, and it was kind of fun seeing their reactions. We had to guide them through it. Okay, just roll the dice, or tell us what you're going to do, but some of them had a good time, and some of it was just like deer in the headlights kind of thing. But I think they had a good time too. And over the course of my campaign, it would evolve or devolve, or change at least, from various, inspirations and material that was coming in, books like Fiend Folio or, the other Monster Manual 2 and such. And of course, the material in Dragon Magazine, which I don't think I had a subscription to, but I'd pick up issues periodically from here to there, and then things would catch my eye, and that would parts of it would at least would go into my campaign. But I'd never really. I guess the other basic books were being published also. The box sets and things for like the Mulvey Basic and then later on like the Menser basic things. But I didn't really understand at the time that those were like really different games. Having started with Holmes Basic. It really just seemed like, basic is like, what we would call today starter sets. You try it out, a couple of levels up to third level or something like that, and decide if you like it. And if you did, and you were going to get serious about it, you'd go to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And I think the thing that kind of threw me for a loop was when I first saw Expert. And I'm thinking, like, what the heck is this? Like, basic is like, you're starting out like your training wheels, and you decide, okay, you get serious, you move on from basic, and you get the real game, the advanced. What is expert? It's like what would expert training wheels be like? No, if you're done with that, you take them off and you get real, and you play the real game. So it took me a long time to find out that there was enough changes, and that these were really different games entirely. Well, not entirely, but you know what I mean. They stood on their own as games. And eventually, I moved away from AD&D and into the lure of more open-ended universal game systems. But we'll get to that. but always had fond memories of my time with the AD&D. And in fact, I did get into a few games in more recent times. One was an online campaign run by a gentleman with a YouTube account named Aaron the Pedantic. And Aaron ran a Greyhawk campaign online, and got enough people interested that he actually had two teams running. So we would alternate 1 week Team A and 1 week Team B. And the other team started out in Hamlet, and we were down south in Dark Shelf, running through a module that I guess was like created as a prelude to the Slavers modules. Although not, he wasn't. Aaron wasn't guaranteeing that we were going to follow that path, but just as a place to start. And it was a lot of fun getting back into it, and running with some new people. And I've also played in a couple of AD&D convention games, both run by Joe Block, the Greyhawk Grognard. One was a venture into the Castle of the Mad Archmage with two other players. One was Joe the Lawyer, who has a YouTube channel, and the other was a fellow named Tyler. And that was fun, and at the end we ended up what we called a TPC, a total party charm. We all got charmed by these Abishai. And a couple of years before that, also at ShireCon, also run by Joe Block, Joe ran us through his own journey to Hamlet. In that game we were 4 players. Gentleman Charlie played a ranger. He rolled pretty well on his stats, so he got to play a ranger. Would start with 2d8s for hit points. The same Tyler gentleman who was playing a cleric, and Jeff Talanian, the author of the excellent Hyperborea game, was playing a thief. And I rolled terrible stats and played a magic user. And I should just mention briefly that Joe's Adventures Dark and Deep is, essentially a revised and current AD&D game. Well, it is AD&D, Adventures Dark and Deep, but it's a current and in-print AD&D. And Jeff Talanian's Hyperborea is, it has a very unique setting that's tied into it. The framework of the game, while not identical to the original AD&D, is certainly a spiritual successor, as I say, to the old game. There are a couple of funny things about this game. First of all, like I mentioned, I rolled terrible for my stats. And then I had to roll randomly for my spells, and that also was a bit of a disaster. I remember I had comprehend languages and featherfall and I guess read magic, and I don't remember having an offensive spell. Maybe I had light, I don't remember. I do remember starting like featherfall, memorizing that as like the most useful spell that I had. And we were traveling, it was outdoor travel on a road, and then we met some dark gnomes, and then so comprehend languages might have been useful at that point, but I didn't have it. I had featherfall, and later on we did get into a combat. I think it was with goblins or something like that, and but the luck of the dice changed around. The some of the other party members were having a hard time, particularly the ranger couldn't connect with a hit. But I was dealing a bit of damage with the staff. I was just connecting, and even though it was just like a D6, I think I was rolling like 4s and 5s and doing more damage than the ranger in melee combat. So that was bizarre. And then we did manage to make our way to Hamlet, and we hired on a mercenary, a retainer, to assist us, and then made our way back out, and eventually came upon a tower that we did climb the outside of the tower, and then made our way, towards the very, end of the session, because these are only like 4-hour sessions, 3 or 4 hours, to the top of the tower, and that's where things went really south. And it turned out that the person that we hired was actually a spy for the people that the bandits that lived in this tower, and the combat was horrendous. Went bad for us. But I was able to escape a little bit, flee for my life, back to the top of the tower after a couple of closing trapdoors on top of people, and moving the furniture on top, and then getting to the top. But I had switched around at some point and found why Featherfall is not the greatest thing. I might as well switch to comprehend languages after not having it when it would have been useful. So here I was at the top of this tower, and had switched out my spell to the other thing, which was now not useful, and the thing that I could have used, I did not have memorized. But Jeff Talanian had remembered an obscure rule from the first edition Unearthed Arcana, that you could cast a spell straight out of your spell book, but it would disappear out of your spell book. But you basically use your spell book as a scroll. So that's what I ended up doing, casting Featherfall straight out of my spell book, so that I could jump off the tower and survive, and then try to escape. And in the end, I did not totally escape. I almost made it, but I came to a fork in the road, and I went in the wrong direction. And so you may have seen some videos of Greyhook Grognard talking about mapping. The mapping is also important, even if you're outdoors. If you've got, different trails and roads that go, split off in different directions. Because it would have saved my life if I had, fully remembered or jot down notes of exactly, how many lefts and rights and turns we did to make our way to Hamlet. Number 5, the hero system. The first classless, open-ended game system that I had played was way back in the day, Champions. I think maybe the first, or if not one of the first, superhero role-playing games. And you could, pretty much come up with any idea or a whole range of, concepts for your superhero character, and pick out different powers, and they would each have an associated, cost for, you're building you get a certain number of points to spend on creating your character. And for each power that you had, you could also further customize it. There was a certain base of what let's say you had Energy Blast, and that would do a certain amount of damage. And then you would choose how many dice of that damage you were going to, start with. And then you could either expand it, give that power advantages. So let's say, rather than just targeting one person, you could do an area of effect, and that would cost you more points depending on, how it worked. The more free form it was, the more it was going to cost you. Or, normally an Energy Blast was a ranged attack. You could take a limitation and say, well, it's an Energy Blast, but I have to use it in melee. energy surrounds my fist, and I have to be up close and actually punch somebody in the face, for this to take effect. And the limitations would, similarly reduce your cost. And you could mix and match. You could have advantages and limitations, and then add them together, and then could be adding or subtracting from your initial cost, or just zero themselves out. In addition, there was different types of damage that the characters would take. It wasn't just hit points or hit points. There was stun damage, which is kind of non-lethal kind of damage, and that was in the superhero genre, that was like the typical thing. You'd be like going around punching each other and throwing each other through windows and whatever, and doing stun damage, so people would get knocked out, and that's how they'd get defeated. But there was a little bit of the other type of damage called body damage, which was more like hit point damage. You're actually taking wounds and stuff like that. And there were some powers that were like along the lines of Punisher or Wolverine, that would go straight to body damage, lethal damage. So that was all interesting. And in addition, the powers, most of the powers had an energy cost, with endurance, they called it. So you'd only have a certain pool of endurance without resting and replenishing it. So you had to be judicious in how much power you were putting out. And endurance was also one of the things that you could modify with those advantages and limitations to make it more or less energy efficient. So I was, fascinated by all this, and I was thinking, immediately after doing our superheroes, of like how this could be applied to other genres of game. And sure enough, the people that put out Champions created, the hero system based on that, and did put out a couple of supplements. One of them being Fantasy Hero, to try to do it for the fantasy games. And another one I had was also called Ninja Hero, like a more martial arts kind of a very 80s kind of thing. And I in fact did convert my Advanced Dungeons and Dragons campaign to Fantasy Hero at one point, and went with that, and it worked pretty well, and I was really satisfied with how things were coming out. The only drawback is when you move out to that type of thing, a lot of the work, where in D&D you have spells that are already created, they do what they do, and magic items and things like that. When you move out to a more freeform system, either you have to have like a supplement that gives you that stuff. And I did have, for Fantasy Hero, I did have a magic item book, but there's only so many items that they could put in the book, and beyond that, everything else that you wanted to create, spells or magic items or other things of that type, would be, it would be up to you. You'd have to do it yourself, and that could be a lot of work, a lot of extra work besides everything else you have to do in creating your campaign. And the other interesting thing about this type of game was that in a superhero game, you can't just say like, okay, I'll lend you some of my powers or something, I'll give you my laser eyes or something like that. Whereas, in the typical fantasy game, you could have a magic item, a magic sword that somebody else could take, and then they would have that power. So it's an interesting thing, and I'm actually, it's a useful concept to have as I'm going through and looking at some of the new games coming out, and and how they act and how they react to certain things. Specifically, I'm talking about Daggerheart, but I'll be putting out a video about that sometime relatively soon. Number 4, Worlds of Wonder. Worlds of Wonder was a very interesting box set game published by Chaosium. It included the basic role-playing rules that Chaosium had derived from RuneQuest, as well as 3 individual books. I think there were 16 pages each for kind of general genre of games. There was Magic World for like a fantasy type game, Super World for superheroes, and Future World for like a traveler sci-fi kind of vibe. There was also a short write-up in there for the City of Wonders, which was kind of a hub where people from different worlds could travel to this hub and cross the stream, so to speak. And a friend started up a campaign in Worlds of Wonder, and of course using all 3 supplements simultaneously. So we had like kind of a mishmash of everything going on at the same time, and it was a blast. And I'd say this this wasn't the first time that I had thought about the idea of using the same rule system for different genres. I had already had some experience with Champions, but this was well before the hero system per se came out. So, and it might have been either the first or one of the first to do that using these basic role playing rules. And one last thing about that Worlds of Wonder campaign that kind of made it interesting and special. A friend had stylized it in a way around the movie Time Bandits. And by that I mean that he had introduced something where Worlds of Wonder, and like other, basic role-playing games, is a percentile game. And you want to roll low. But so he had it in the game anytime a player rolled 100, which was, kind of the worst thing, you could roll. Nearby, a gate would open, and the gate would be to someplace unknown. But if you decided to, if things were going bad, or for whatever reason, you just decided to head into the gate, then the campaign, randomly went to some other world, that he had like a whole list, whole chart of different worlds that he had created up. And you'd be basically like, in some sense, like ending that campaign and starting a new one, because you'd just be transported to a whole different place and start exploring and figuring out where you are and what's going on. So that was an interesting and very creative, and a lot of improv going on in there. But props to him for doing that work and creating such a dynamic game. And in the number 3 slot, GURPS, the Generic Universal Role-Playing System. The same guy that ran the Worlds of Wonder campaign, sometime later ran a few campaigns of GURPS for us. I can remember at least 2 different fantasy campaigns and 1 sci-fi / maybe not superheroes, but in the way that like Gamma World was kind of superhero-ish, same type of thing. Because I do remember playing a 4-armed martial artist with some other. I think he had like superhero-ish kind of skin, that was tough as iron to provide some protection. So once again, a lot of good memories, a lot of fun times, and I also learned a bit from GURPS, and we played third edition, and I thought that would help me narrow down because I have a hard time remembering exactly what time everything happened. But evidently, third edition lasted quite a while. GURPS first edition came out in '86, and by '88, third edition was released, and that lasted through at least we stopped playing like GURPS at least by about 2000, 2001 or so. And that entire stretch was third edition, although I think there was a revised version that I don't think we used. Anyhow, some of the rules in GURPS about, armor as damage reduction or damage resistance. I forget the exact term, but, subtracting the amount of damage you took. Combined with other types of defenses. In third edition, they had both what they call passive defense and damage reduction. So there was a little bit of the maybe your armor just deflected the blow and you didn't take any damage, or if you did take damage, it could be reduced by a certain amount. There was also, this was the first time that it came to different damage types from regular fantasy melee weapons, because there was, bludgeoning, slashing, and piercing, and they would multiply afterwards. So it might take more from a bludgeoning attack because of the leverage, because it was a swinging attack, which had a certain chart for separate for swinging or thrusting attacks, whereas a piercing weapon might have a little bit less because you were thrusting, but the amount that got through on the piercing attack would be doubled then. So, first you subtract from whatever the armor takes out, but whatever gets through gets doubled. So it was kind of interesting and different trade-offs. That's what I kind of liked about it. It was a little bit of that simulation to like really get you immersed into, okay, this is how things would kind of happen. Not exactly, but close enough. And then combined with having real choices of whether you choose to use an axe or a spear or what have you, made a difference. So I really enjoyed that. I got interested in it and kind of tucked away a lot of those ideas into the back of my brain. And towards the later part of this period of gaming, I had created some grand plans of launching my own GURPS campaign, which I did a lot of thinking about it and such, but it never came to fruition. In spot number 2, ShadowDark. So what can I say about ShadowDark? I believe it's a well-written, well-designed, well-formatted game focused on the old dungeon crawling experience, and in many ways a cousin to the old basic sets, not only the Holmes basic that I played briefly, but the other ones that I kind of ignored at the time when I was playing AD&D, the Mulvey basic and Menser basic and so forth. The creator of the game, Kelsey Dion, is an excellent ambassador, not only to selling her own game, but to the hobby as a whole, I believe. Through its third-party license agreement, this game has attracted many talented people to make settings, supplements, player options, adventures for this game. And like any such game that's open for anybody to contribute and publish their own compatible quote-unquote compatible material with it. There is a little bit of caveat emptor, buyer beware. You do need to take a look at it. But in my experience, there's been many, many excellent additions and supplements. I've run as a player in ShadowDark and some convention games, and it was just so easy to play right off your character sheet. No need to reference the book. It's so straightforward. And in some ways, it's not so much what the game, what the rules are adding into your game. It's just having a game that pretty much gets out of the way and lets you play. And I could certainly see myself putting together some either one-shot adventures or short arcs, or even perhaps something a little bit longer, on a periodic basis. But all in all, an excellent game, and worthy of my number 2 slot until it gets dethroned. And in my number 1 slot, at least for the time being, is Dragonbane. Dragonbane may well be the closest thing that I've come to the perfect game for me, at least. It is very approachable and easy to understand and play through. And like ShadowDark, it can easily be played, right from the character sheet, without necessarily having to reference to the rules during gameplay. But it is surprisingly rich in options and things that interact and make choices meaningful in the game. Things like the conditions, such as angry and dazed and exhausted and disheartened. These are conditions that can be consequences that are not like, oh, you take X more hit point damage. The gear and armor and weapons all have a few qualities that make it important what choices you make without it being overwhelming. The magic system I also find interesting with a number of options, but again, without being overwhelming. The initiative system and the constrained action economy, I think, make things strategic and interesting and move the combat along. The monsters are dynamic and flavorful and not just bags of hit points. And I find them very interesting. And I have to say, the first thing that drew me into joining the Kickstarter for this game was the artwork, which I find fantastic. I love it. I find the origins of Dragonbane a bit fascinating as well. The current Dragonbane game is also published simultaneously in Swedish under the original name of the game, Drakar Damanor, if I got that right. And from an interesting book called Outside the Box, How Sweden Conquered the World of Role-Playing Games by Magnus Seder. I learned some interesting facts about how a young Frederick Malmberg made his way to America and was very interested in gaming and finally made his way to California and met up with the Chaosium people. Specifically, he rented a room from Steve Barron. And also, play-tested some of Chaosium's early games, like Call of Cthulhu and Stormbringer. He also managed to get a draft version of the Magic World, what would become the Magic World supplement from Worlds of Wonder, which would be later published in 1982. when Frederick Malmberg made his way back to Sweden, he actually was able to, kind of make a deal, reluctantly at first, but he did make a deal with Chaosium to do a translation of the basic role-playing rules and Magic World and into Swedish, and then publish also in 1982 Drakar och Dammar. And then there were several editions. I don't know the entire history of the game, but I believe it was second edition where they introduced the ducks, the duck people. They weren't original to the first edition. But from the familiarity with RuneQuest and the Swedish people's love of Donald Duck, I think it was probably just inevitable that they would be introduced into the game. Now, in the current version, it's changed just a little bit, but it's gone from a percentile roll to a D20, but it retains the same flavor, the same roll under mechanics. And the thing that intrigued me back in the day with Worlds of Wonder and the basic role-playing system was the skill systems, and the fact that just by using the skills in the game, you would generate opportunities to improve that skill. And that's carried forward into Dragonbane to this day. And the last thing that I'll say is that I do find Dragonbane to be kind of modular in that there are certain areas that are not going to break the system if you tweak it a little bit one way or the other, and one of those is with the races, which are called kin in Dragonbane. You don't have to play in a game with mallards if you don't want to. I know that's, kind of a sticking point with people. Some people love them and other people hate them, without even playing it, just the idea of it. And in fact, there will be a Kickstarter coming up. I'm not sure if it's going to be later this year or next year, for Trudvang, which is like another, I'd say like setting or a different way of doing it, and I'm pretty sure the mallards are not going to be in there, and it's going to be a more traditional, a little bit, maybe a little bit less mirth and more mayhem. And I have a public playlist on my channel that for Dragonbane, and it's mostly my videos, just covering aspects, and it's an ongoing. I'm not complete with all the videos for going over the game. But I put in the first slot, if you haven't seen it, there's a 25 minute video, kind of movie based in the Trudvang setting. And I would say anybody that enjoys fantasy movies or fantasy shows should take a look at it if you haven't seen it. It's excellent. So there you have it, my top 10. Like I said at the beginning, not necessarily the best games or best design games, but ones that I've experienced and had a lot of fun with. And I'd like to just take a moment to thank everybody else that put out their top 10. It's interesting to take a look at the games that people played, and I should also mention that just because games not on my list, there are many games, excellent games that I just haven't had the opportunity to play in. Like for example, any of the Palladium games, like Rifts and others. From what I hear about them, they sound fascinating, but I just haven't had anybody else introduce those games, and some of the games that people have had on their top 10 hadn't even heard of. Many of them I have, though. So just thanks again to everybody. And I've got a public playlist on my channel, also with the top 10 videos that I came across. So if you also did a top 10 video and it's not on my playlist, let me know in the comments, and I'll add it in. And so until I resurface, may your successes be many and your failures be memorable.